I love to trade. I usually trade actively and kind of really restrain myself because I don't want to lead or, kind of tell you guys what to do. But I get that sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of a voice alongside you. And I recently partnered with somebody from the institutional space who's been looking at an element or an angle of the domain that I think is very compelling. It's something that makes a lot of sense to me as a market maker and someone with an understanding of how some of the back end works, not only with our hedging process, but also with other participants. As you know, VolSignals, kind of the idea that I had when I framed this was like, I am very, very keen, very aware of a certain type of flow that is mechanical and it's prescriptive. There's a cause to what happens. To me, that's much more compelling of something to follow than TA because there's a certainty, there's a chain of transmission. I've been looking for things like this, and I have a lot of good ideas, whether those things are data to share or things like this, where somebody has joined me a little bit and we've been observing how the market responds to certain types of signals together. And I would say in the limited time we've been doing this, it's been very interesting to see convergence, where really strong outcomes are obviously much more compelling when they're affirmed via both signals, right? But, and I'll put a case study together for you guys too, because one of the first days we really started doing this live was November 22nd. If you remember November 22nd, we had a really strong gamma profile, really defined or dominated by a 10,000 lot of a 0-day call. Now, if you were to just ask me at that time, what's your opinion of the price action going forward? The obvious thing, if you guys have been around for a while, is we're probably going to pin that call as we come up against it because we're going to grind along this delta path where we oscillate between buying and selling futures because of charm and gamma, and then we pin. And it's very, very difficult to get through that much gamma. And what really made it very clear there's something here was that day, and again, we're kind of feeling each other out. He didn't say this in the group to everybody because we're still testing it, but he told me literally 1 minute before we broke out that we're going to break out. And I kind of, I'm open to things, but the amount of gamma that we had to break through to get through a real price level here was tremendous. 10,000 calls at the money or right above us midday when nothing's going on. A breakout is the last thing I'm expecting. And sure enough, 1 minute later, we broke out. I think it was $16 or $17. And what was fascinating about it is when the signal stopped firing on his end a little bit, the directional influence started to seem absorbed. Going through the calls, they kind of just tracked along the 75 to 85 delta range, where once everything else dried up and nobody was trading again, the grind back down to the strike was so precise, and we just dumped back to it. And of course, it caught itself because of the gamma. And so the really compelling thing here is there was no way for me to ever predict that type of breakout. And to have someone who has a tool that was like, this is going to happen, even in the face of the dominance, the all odds against it, I guess I'm trying to say, is very compelling, very interesting, because like I always say, these flows, as good as they are to understand these mechanics, sometimes you have to remind yourself that they're not the entire piece of the pie, right? Even a strong gamma profile can be easily overtaken. And so having something else that can either confirm or reject a hypothesis or give you a little bit of pause sometimes and just better shape your entries is incredibly valuable, especially when that thing is also somewhat predictive or associated with footprints of real flows. So with that in mind, I don't want to talk too much. I will do a bit of a morning preview as well, but I'll let Trading Closed take over the screen share to start, and I'll do a little bit of a browser walkthrough afterwards.
All right, so lovely to meet all of y'all. That was a really great intro there. That sort of covered pretty much everything. I think I can just go now. No, we'll do a little presentation and we'll run through what it is we've been working on and then the offering that we have doing together. And we call this Return to Mean. And the reason is, the best way to sort of frame what we're doing is to kind of think about these marks, which we're going to show you how they print. Think about them as sort of revert to mean reversion signals. The market as it goes through the day is always going to be in two stages. One would be in sort of mean reversion. So in trader talk, we call that chop. Oh, it's very choppy here, or grinding here, not going anywhere. Maybe pause. People use those words as well. And that's really where we have a kind of a point in the market. It might be a very tight range, or it might be a slightly wider range where the market seems to be kept. If you can start off with the mindset of really that's all we're looking at, these two modes, and be able to define. So what we track is index market makers, ETF APs, and prime broker lenders. And we track them via select contracts across the equity and short-term interest rate swaps complex. Now, this is a very complex. There's a dad joke for you. There are a lot of swaps that are traded throughout the course of the day. These are traded by very large banks towards very large end users, and this is the most common way that size likes to trade long and short at these products. It is a very complex area of the market. I'm not really going to go into it in general, but I'm certainly not going to go into it in the few minutes that we have here. But just to say that we do track for other stuff. We do track the entire space. For what we're tracking here, it's actually a very select group of contracts that go together to kind of help us understand the particular groupings of market participants. Again, the index market makers, ETF authorized participants, and prime brokers, the main swaps that they are using. Why that matters, we'll come to it shortly. And then what do we record? So we essentially record times throughout the day. This is a time trigger, times throughout the day where the entire complex comes into balance. Now, this is a bit of a vague thing to say. It's hard to really understand unless you really know what is going on in there. But suffice to say that there are points throughout the course of the day where all these various swaps diverge from each other in terms of the implied interest rate or the implied value of them. Now, a market is supposed to be a rational logic machine, so it does push back together towards this balance. And so when it does that, we've noticed that these are very, very key times. So it's a time trigger of the balance, and we use that to indicate times on the chart where we think that the market is in balance. So the time trigger, and then we use the spot that the index is on at that moment to indicate that this is a balance point. Now, again, this sounds a little bit confusing. Don't worry, we're going to get to imagery to explain. How do we do that? So these marks that we have spoken of will either indicate the two modes that we are in, right? So either the mean reversion or chop or pause, or alternatively, they will indicate whether we are trending, we are moving. And we can use these signals to either, well, it depends how you want to trade, right? You could either, for example, be wanting to sell straddles. So in a pause period, that's excellent. That would be a time to do it. It's not really a trade I like to do. I like to use, for example, the mean reversion as sort of a target for my long or my short, and then to kind of get out. Again, what does that look like and what does it mean? So let's rush to the visual imagery here. Okay, we're going to just do a few charts because this could go on forever and I want to be quick. We're just going to show the few days that have transpired this week because it's a really good example. So what you can see there is this is yesterday, and what you will have is our main signals. So the first signal is a soft signal. It is a white bar. You will see occasional white bars in there. Those are soft signals. We don't really take them to mean much. The issue is we have code that can print on triggers in TradingView, but because most of these swaps are traded over the counter, and because a bunch of the feeds, most of the feeds, sadly, do not come in to TradingView feeds, even if you buy all the feeds. We only are able to sort of trigger on a corner of the market in TradingView. When that corner of that we're looking at triggers, we print a white bar. And so that's why they're softer signals. They can mean something sometimes. Usually, generally speaking, ignore them. They're there just to show you that stuff may be happening. The main signal is the blue box, and you can see a number of blue boxes there. Thursday was an interesting day yesterday where we had very few in the latter part of the market. It is what it is. We take the signals as they come. The blue boxes are our most commonly printed signals. And then you have the blue lines, which you can see there were only 2 yesterday. These are really our most important mean reversion signals. These are the strongest signals of the day. How many we get on a day? Sometimes we only get a couple, sometimes we get a bunch. Really just depends on what the complex is doing. And then the final element you'll see there is the beige line. And the beige line is really just a note. We put them in occasionally to indicate interesting areas. It's not as meaningful as those blue lines, but as you can see yesterday, you'll see up there was 3 boxes that printed pretty close together, 3 strong signals. So we marked that as an interesting area of note. Okay, but what the hell does all of that mean? Let's go on to our next one. So this is Wednesday, the 4th of December. Wednesday, you will see the first sort of grey box there talking about the Euro London close with the strongest line. We get the strongest lines. They print. Usually we get one in the morning. Most days we get one in the afternoon. They are where the entire complex comes into balance. It's a very, very meaningful point when you're tracking these with all, I don't know, I have like 5 Python terminals open and then an Excel sheet pulling stuff also. When it all lines up, it becomes like the lights, color triggers, Colorama starts triggering on my Python. It's very dramatic when they all line up. And so it's very noticeable on my end. This is, yes, to be clear, this is what it's going to look like in the room. These print live as we go along. So I'm going to go in order of what we saw on Wednesday. So starting with the Euro London close, we had that strongest signal. You can see it there. This is Chicago time at around 10:15. These are very meaningful signals, and usually what that means is that the market is going to mean revert around it for a period of time. We don't know the period of time, but we hope to get signals that it busts out. Wednesday was quite a while. It kind of chopped around there for 2 hours. I mean, you can see with this line how it really hugged to it for a while, and then it fell away, and then it started to move back. And as it started to move back, we got our second set of signals, which are really strong, our trending mode, and they are higher prints into a spot that is moving up, or if it was a downtrend, you'd see lower prints, lower box prints. So you can see here these cluster, and then this little print up here from around 12:30, I guess, Chicago time, and it started to move up towards initially first our mean reversion, and then kept moving through. These are pretty strong signals. We have a chat and we talk these through live. You don't have to remember this off by heart. I'm just kind of giving you a view of what it looks like so you can imagine, without having to imagine, you can kind of see physically what it would look like. Then we came up nicely to what we had, the beige signal as well, remembering those are just notes. They're not as meaningful, but there was, as you can see, a real cluster, a real tight grouping of box signals here. Usually we use them if we're long to kind of say, you know what, maybe take some profit off, or maybe just, be done here and kind of like wait and see what happens. That's usually how we use the clusters. And then we can see it kept on moving up. And on this day, on Wednesday this week, we did get another strongest of the afternoon. So we get a strongest of the morning, strongest of the afternoon. And usually our strongest of the afternoon is printed at 2 o'clock, as you can see there, with an hour to go. Usually we like to think that this is going to mean revert and very possibly even pin. So on Wednesday, it missed the pin by, I think, 3/4 of a point. It's pretty good. So usually that's what we see with strongest of the afternoon. To be clear, we don't get those every afternoon, sadly. We're at the behest of the signals. They print when they print, but this is a good example of that day, Wednesday. I'm going to run through quickly and try to show you Tuesday as well, but we can talk a little bit about what we mean when we say who we're tracking, index market makers and ETFs. This is a good day to have a look at it. We have another stronger signal right there. It's this second one here. If you look at the screenshot and you look to the right, this time you'll see the little note there for strongest is actually written there against the axis there of 605.275. So that was the strongest one there. It printed at 10:20. And so you can see that mean reversion did hold, but it didn't hold very long. It held only really for an hour. And then you can start to see, right, little rising boxes there from around 11:15. And you can see a bit of a trend. We've had a week of like pretty tight ranges, right? So this move was really only, well, let's say, 10 points, 15 points, but it's a really, really great day to look to say, even in these tight ranges, even in these really tight days, we still get really strong signals. Obviously, if it's a bigger day where you're moving 20, 30, 50, 60 points, you get more signals, but it's even clearer and easier to read on those days. We got a cluster print up here, which was a get flat for all of us in the chat. We have a chat. Vol shares stuff. I share some stuff as we kept going. So we, when that printed that cluster there, I actually think I was long. I was like, I'm getting out here. So it was a nice moment to see, and you can see it kind of chops around here in that period. And on Tuesday, once again, we got a strongest print. Again, roughly around 2 o'clock, I guess, an hour to go. And once again, it pretty much picked the pin. Despite the fact that we had this pretty dramatic rug down here and everyone started getting short, we were buying from there. Our attitude was, no, it's going to come back. And it did, because we see that quite often. Not always, but quite often. So what are we seeing here? So mainly what we're seeing here, and let's go to the trading mode signal, that one there from around, let's say 11:15. What we see on days like this is that ETF authorized participants, and I need to rush through stuff here, so we can talk about authorized participants at length in the chat or in later calls. But if you don't understand authorized participants, I strongly recommend you go and visit my friend Mr. Google and learn a little bit, because authorized participants are probably, together with index market makers, the single most important element in markets. They are the groups that get together and purchase the stocks that get wrapped in ETF wrappers and get made to ETF. So, as you know, every day ETFs, well, not every day, but every day, most days, the SPY, for example, increases in assets under management. What they need to do is someone needs to buy all those stocks, put them together, all 500 stocks, and wrap them in the ETF. And that's what authorized participants do, essentially. So when they're doing their buying, they move the market quite meaningfully. And those are the signals that we're hoping to really identify. So on that day, this day here, Tuesday, with this move up, we got a pretty clear signal that they were setting up, because they use swaps, to get ready to do their buying. And it's pretty easy for us to kind of say, cool, they're going to move the market somewhat. How much? Well, it depends. If there's counterflow pushing against them, that'll make it harder. If it's not, it'll get it moving. But we can see very large notional sizes being loaded up and purchased. And so we usually just get in alongside them. And that's ultimately what these signals, the trending ones, are showing us. So this is a really great day for showing there was some mean reversion, which shows us chop, and then showed us that we believe that ETF APs were going shopping. We're just going to jump in behind their wake. And then when we started to get these sort of cluster prints here that you see at 1 p.m. Chicago time, or a bit before it, our attitude was they're done, they're finished. So that's not to say the market can't keep moving, but the factor that we were following behind is finished. So at the very least, we should get out and wait to see. And that's really what the signals show. And that's really ultimately what we're trying to share with you with this service. This market, this corner of the market, the swaps, is extremely complex. So what we tend to do is want to visually represent it to you in a way that looks almost like TA, I guess, because there's lines and boxes and prints, but this is not TA. We are not going on, this is not an indictment of TA. I think TA is great. I think it makes sense. A lot of the theories behind TA that works is great. Rentec uses a lot of TA, whether people know that or not. I don't have an issue with TA, but it's more so, I only mentioned to let you know that that's not really what we're doing here. Ultimately, what we're doing here is we're looking for, a very important market participants in the same way that the VolS service is looking at index market makers, saying they're important market participants. We are looking at index market makers and ETF APs, saying that they're very important market participants, and trying to kind of follow in behind their flow. This is Monday. Again, we're running out of time. The market's about to open, but ultimately you can see a similar sort of set, a stronger signal, a really nice mean reversion to it there at 1:30 or 1 o'clock, 1:30 Chicago time. We see this a lot. I wanted to share this image as well, because on Monday you can see we got a stronger signal up there into the close at 6066, and then it fell away. It missed it. I mean, it missed it by 5 points, but it still missed it. And that's to kind of show you that, listen, as something that VolS was talking about earlier, which is all we're trying to do is track really big market participants. They don't win every day. Their flow does not win every day. There's always someone bigger. And so if there's news, or one of the FOMC guys feel the need, one of the Fed chairs feel the need to talk, or there's earnings coming in very late, this will usually be big news, and it'll just knock off whatever the sort of the balance is. So those are the days where we're not perfect and we're going to miss. Okay, let me jump to the final page, and then I'll hand over to VolS. So what does that look like? So this is how we do it. We do it as a live stream. I hope you've seen some of the screenshots there. We will also share the PDF. It streams as a live stream. We don't seem to have the issues that we've had here. Works with a trial and then a membership, a monthly membership. The trial is a 5 trading day trial. So whenever you start, it's 5 trading days. And that is priced at $145 for the trial. We recommend that you don't use it for trading for the first 2 days, just so you can read and see what is happening. What does read mean? We have a live chat where VolS updates various gamma and profile stuff as we go along. And then I myself are commentating on the signals. I also kind of am able to give you a little bit of an indication of like, oh, it looks like there's not a balance yet, but it certainly looks like a couple of large investment banks, in particular our friends at Goldman Sachs, are looking to kind of smash this thing into balance, and these are really important points. And so you can get a little bit of a heads up on stuff that's coming as well. That is the 5-day trial. We want everyone to go through it. It's not just so that you can see what it's about. It's also, we need to kind of see a little bit what you guys are about. This service is not going to be for everyone. And so we want to kind of be able to kind of see a little bit who you are and then show who we are. And then the memberships are $900 a month. We're going to commit to that level for the first 3 months. So everyone who signs up in the first 3 months gets that committed level. We do have a maximum amount that we could let in. At this stage, we think it's probably 80 to 100, but we'll see what that looks like as we go along. It really is just because as it becomes more and more full, it becomes harder and harder to sort of stay across everyone's needs and requests. I should also say that there is, with the trial, we want to also make it that we're free and able to answer any questions in the chat as we go. So for now, we can only do 6 trials per day. we can add 6 every day. And then that way we can kind of say, look, if all 6 have a lot of questions and concerns and they're asking a lot of questions, it's easy for me to be there and available to 6 people and answer all their questions. Once it gets to more to that, it's probably a little bit too hard for me to answer all the questions.
Yeah, kind of along the line. Sorry, I'm just gonna interject quickly. I think that's some of the reasoning for that is obviously, there's a lot of value, for example, in things like the VIP chat. But one thing that I get requested all the time is more commentary intraday. It's not easy to do that all the time. And in order to have a space that's a little more directed out, I love engagement and I love good quality back and forth, obviously. But a full open chat of 100 people or even 50 people, if it's talkative, is difficult to stand point. People just want to know what is our read on things. And so this has been a good opportunity to kind of figure out really whether there's convergence or divergence in our signals. For me, I'm very accustomed to the charm profiles and reading order flow. I'm very in tune with not just the 0-day stuff, but the vol space too. And oftentimes it's difficult to articulate in a chat. So it's not like a constant live audio stream all day. It's more like a series of signals with occasional narration. I like to talk instead of type too much when I have a view. So I will probably do a little bit of voice narration, but with an intent to put in notes during the day for my view, so that people who are interested in intraday shaping or really want to understand, throughout the different times of the day, like approaching the London close, for example, the midday period where charm takes over, are there signals in my domain or my view that are confirming or rejecting his? And then, of course, the end of the day, the pin type stuff, we've been very conscientious of market on close, these heavy imbalances. Sometimes there's really amazing edge there, but it's a little bit of a nuance and it requires tracking of the deltas, things that are difficult to do in a big chat and just are a little more intensive that I do for myself sometimes if I'm active in trading. But I get requests all the time for this. So this is a really good opportunity to have not only synergy in the signals, but something a little bit more involved for understanding how to read the order flow and the price path. Sorry, I didn't mean to rob you there the last few minutes.
Oh, no, that's perfect. I mean, I'm going to jump off in a sec, but that's it. That's perfect. And exactly, just to piggyback on that, that's right. The chat needs to be this sort of really clean sort of stream so that folks can, jump off. People can't sit all day, jump off for an hour and come back and then read the notes, right? The notes are all there. They stay up. And so, if we kind of have it where, folks are asking questions, that's great because maybe someone's embarrassed to ask that same question. And so that's helpful to have that question asked publicly in the chat. That's really awesome. But once it starts to get to too many people asking too many questions, it's just a mess in there. And it's really hard for traders to kind of be like, no, I'm just looking what the signals were. I need clarification. So yeah, that's really perfect. And that's really what we hope this to be, right? A really great sort of tool for folks who are using stuff in and out during the day, maybe confirming other signals or maybe being their primary signals.
Yeah, exactly. And the server so far, when I set this up, the intention was to have it be primarily to support education. But I love to trade, and my view is always through trading. I don't have an easy kind of nuts and bolts approach where I'm willing to say, oh, hey, just do this when this happens, just do this when this happens. I'm very engaged and active with trading. So in this sense, it becomes a little bit easier to give you guys more quality shaping of things and to see how I'm expressing strategies too. And so different setups will have different opportunities, obviously. And if you guys are interested in more of like just a trading room versus like a constant education and reinforcing of the education, there'll be a little bit of that too. But for the most part, this is just going to be, okay, here's what looks viable. Here's what looks interesting from a directional perspective, or like where the signal's firing. What's my base case? What's his base case? What am I looking to do right now? And then kind of track those and evolve. And if that's what you're looking for, and I think a lot of people have been requesting this for a while, then this would be very much for you. So just DM me or email at admin@volsignals.com if you're interested. Again, like we said, it has to be limited acceptance first. So, and again, it's not like any kind of preferential treatment or whatever. I think there are some guys who've been asking for a while, so I'll reach out to them first or accept them first. But it's just in order to keep it ordered and structured and make sure that the result is that the room is clean and efficient and the guys who want to be there are there. And it's understandable for people. So, and to the first few guys who've been requesting access for days before when I first started putting this out there, sorry, it's taken a week to get this going. We've been testing it a little bit live with some of the admins, just to kind of gauge, the perspective and the flow. And I think now it's probably good to go, and we'll start accepting people for next week. So, anything else you want to say, or should we hop off now that we're open?
No, I'm all good. We should.
Awesome.
I'm all good. I have to go and set up my Python terminal.
Exactly.
So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in the future.
All right, cool. Good luck, guys.